I want to talk to you about Transistor podcast host. And in today's conversation, I want to do a review, a walkthrough. I want to talk to you about the pros and cons, the pricing, everything. Okay. So let me first give you the preview of Transistor. So when you think about Transistor FM, I want you to think about a platform that offers a podcast hosting for creatives, brands, and professionals. And it's basically a streamlined hosting, distribution, and management tool that actually helps podcasters lives like it really improves their lives in terms of the way they deliver their content. So beyond the core functionality of a transistor, you have a lot of stuff happening, but it's really important to understand what you're looking for. And so transistor is a podcast host, distribution, and management platform. The question is it what you're looking for? If that's what you're looking for, then you will really love transistor. And the key features are its streamlined distribution, customizable media player and website, and the ability to have multiple podcasts on one account. Now, Transistor actually doesn't charge you per show, so you can have as many shows as you want on your account. That's not a problem. Okay, so think about this host as a mid price sort of platform. They're not really expensive, but they're not really cheap either. So they're charging about. I'll speak about pricing later on, but they're charging about 19 to 25 bucks in some cases. $30 a month if you are on a monthly plan. If you go on a yearly plan, the cost even go lower. Okay, so the transistors USPs, unique selling propositions include streamlined distribution. So you can publish your podcast to major listening platforms in one click. So this is kind of cool in terms of efficiency, in terms of scalability, and also in terms of automation. That's what you want anyway. You want to automate things from the get-go. And Transistor also has unlimited storage. So no matter your subscription level, you'll get unlimited storage, and everything that happens on the cloud. So this is really cool. And you also have multiple podcasts for free. That's what I just said. So this is really good. So there's no extra charge. Now, in terms of data creation, Transistor is relatively young. Okay, so they actually came on the scene on the podcast scene in 2017. So this is about what, less than 10 years. And so you can distribute to Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, and more in one click. And this is really cool. By the way, boss, welcome back to the show. It's really a pleasure to have you here. Make yourself comfortable. You are going to enjoy today's conversation. Let me give you a few smart moves here. How do you actually review Transistor FM? And so we actually looked at a few things, and we actually came up with a model that can help you also determine whether or not you should go with Transistor or another player. So you got to look at pricing. So basically, what is your budget? Got to have a clear idea, because Transistor is not cheap. As I said before, they're not expensive either. So they're mid-priced. So you got to ask yourself whether your budget and your resources overall actually allow you to actually contract with Transistor. What about analytics? Is that important to you? Because some podcasters really don't care about analytics, especially when they are beginning, and some podcasters really care from the get-go. So being able to understand your podcast performance intimately is kind of critical for some people, and so you want to see what kind of data insights and analytics Transistor actually offers, and as well as how accessible they are, because they can have like a pretty complicated analytics, and you have no idea what they're talking about. So see if Transistor has the kind of analytics you're looking for. And also think about media player. So if you should be looking for a hosting platform that offers a customizable, embeddable media player that allows you in the end to share your show whatever you want. Right? Again, talking about flexibility, talking about scalability, and talking about efficiency. Also, file hosting. Are you looking for a file host? Then you got to ask yourself, is Transistor actually offers that? You got to, when you talk to customer service, which you should anyway before actually signing up, you want to ask those questions about file hosting. So compatible file formats are explicitly related to audio quality. So you want to look for hosting platforms that accept lossless audio files, so that podcasters do not compromise on their recording. So that's what you want. Also, think about distribution, think about monetization. So your ability to monetize your podcast directly from your podcast hosting platform, whether it is Transistor or Podbean or another player, can save you a lot of time. So for podcast hosts that actually call themselves a management tool, You want to make sure that you are able to oversee revenue streams and create new opportunities for monetization right from the platform. By the way, boss, I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We are having a conversation about Transistor podcast hosting. So let's look at the pricing here. You can see the pricing on the screen here. So you have a trifecta of prices. So you have starter, professional, and business. As you can see here, Transistor is not cheap and neither it is expensive, right? So because the prices here are annual. So you're paying $190 for as a starter. You're paying $190 per year. As a professional, you're paying $490 a year, and for a business, you are paying $990 a year. So the reason why I'm saying it's not that expensive is because if you divide this by 12, you are getting what? As a starter, you're getting less than $20 a month. As a professional, you're getting less, $490. That's about $40 to $45 a month. And if you are a business, we're talking here about less than $100 a month. So this is still worth it. So I'm showing you first here the annual pricing. And next, I want to show you on the screen right now. So you see here, we have the monthly pricing. So 19, 49, and 99. Okay, so you can see that if you switch to a yearly, let's say a yearly billing process as opposed to a monthly billing process, you're saving pretty much like, let's say, so you go from 190 to, so you're saving about 20%, give or take, okay? So this is really worth it. So when we talk about the starter plan, you can create unlimited podcast. You have live customer support, advanced analytics, built-in podcast websites, to additional team members, and up to 50 private podcast subscribers, and a maximum of 15,000 downloads per month. For the professional, you actually have same as a starter plus up to 5 additional team members. You have dynamic ads, so you have pre-roll, mid-roll, and post-roll. You have dynamic show notes, up to 500 private podcast subscribers, and a maximum of 75,000 downloads per month. And for the business, basically you have the same as the starter plus professional plus up to 10 team members. So you have the ability to remove branding from your media player, which you should anyway. You have dynamic ads, pre-roll, mid-roll, post-roll. You have dynamic show notes. You have maximum of 3,000 private podcast subscribers, and you have up to 200,000 downloads per month. So this is really good. I mean, this is really good. We actually recommend you having the professional or the business plan. Let me talk to you about the pros and cons of Transistor FM. So I want to first start with the pros. So you have a podcast website. This is really cool. This is really cool in terms of helping you have a presence online. So Transistor FM automatically generates a podcast website for your show. So this is really good. And there is no charge for additional podcasts. So you can create, import, and host as many podcasts as you want for one monthly price, whether you go with the starter, the professional, or the business plan. So for every podcast you create, you get access to a unique RSS feed, advanced analytics, a custom web page, and you'll be able to invite new team members to manage that specific podcast show, regardless of the plan you're currently in. You also have embeddable Transistor podcast player. That's really cool. And you have detailed podcast analytics. So we're talking here about the detailed stats around your monthly listens, total listens per episode. You have average downloads per episode. You have most popular listening applications and which devices your listeners are using. You have easy submission to major platforms. So we're talking here about Apple Podcast, Spotify, and other major podcast listening platforms. And this is really cool. You have private podcast. You have a tool that's very easy to use. You have dynamic audio insertion. We love that a lot. I mean, if you are a podcaster, you know what that is really important. And you have team permissions. You have this is really good. So when we talk about team permissions, you have 3 types of users in Transistor FM. You have owner, the admins, and the members. This is really cool. So the owner controls the billing and subscription settings and is able to add new shows to the account. Admins are able to edit new show settings, manage episodes, and actually view analytics and manage team members. You can have more than one. Members can edit and add episodes and view analytics. They cannot delete episodes or manage other team members. So what about the cons? What about the disadvantages of a Transistor? So there are no additional features beyond basic functionality. Podcast subscription are not really straightforward. And basically, you have a platform that automatically converts file to MP3. You have download limits, so a maximum of 15,000 download limits a month on the starter plan, for instance. The platform doesn't support video podcasting. It is kind of expensive if you were to look at it from a certain point of view, and ad insertion is not available to anyone. By the way, boss, I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We are having a conversation about Transistor podcast hosting. This is a review of the platform. Let's talk about the key features you can expect if you were to actually choose Transistor FM. So that's the first one is what I just told you earlier. So you have a podcast website. So you can create, you have this coming automatically. So you have a homepage, episode specific landing pages, an about page, and a subscribe page. So this is pretty straightforward. You have private podcast, so subscribers can subscribe to your podcast whenever they tune in your content, receive their exclusive episodes to their phones, and actually download them for offline listening. So this is really cool. So this is not just for podcasters who have a subscription available for our listeners. This feature works well for other settings too. So use private podcast as a means of communicating securely with the employees, onboarding with new members of your team, sharing educational course content with a cohort of students, or if you're an author, sharing exclusive audio with a purchase of your book. Okay, so when you create a private podcast, Transistor FM create a unique protected RSS feed for each subscriber. This means that you will be able to limit who has access to the content. You also have dynamic audio insertion. So this is another important element you want to have when you want to avail yourself of. So this tool automatically inserts pre, mid, and post roll content into your podcast. The audio that is inserted can be campaign ads or other audio such as announcements. So you're able to choose exactly what the mid-roll segment is, so you can ensure it doesn't fall at an awkward moment. And this is really cool. And so when we analyze Transistor FM, we think about a tool that's great for podcasters with a big team and multiple shows. Okay, we're talking about a big production here. Okay, it's a great platform. It's very easy to use. It is sleek. It is designed with podcasters in mind. And so its core functionality, distribution, analytics, and management work well and streamline the process. Podcasters seeking additional features or the ability to create, live stream, or monetize from the podcast hosting platform will probably want to look elsewhere. Okay, and however, if you're working on more than one show, Transistor actually is a perfect option. The ability to add multiple team members and have any number of shows associated with your single account actually for one fixed price is invaluable. Let me give you the steps you need to really follow if you were to start with Transistor FM. How do you get started? So step number one, you want to click add new show at the top of your dashboard. Step number two, you want to fill out your new show's information. Here we're talking about the title, description, author, and owner. And you want to upload the podcast artwork too, if any. So when you're finished, click the green create my show button. Next, you'll be invited to upload your episode. And if you're finished recording and are ready to publish, click add your first episode. And you want to fill out your episode's details about the title, the episode the summary. You also want to have the show notes, and you want to upload the cover art. I mean, these steps are pretty straightforward, nothing complicated here. And so you can also migrate your podcast to Transistor's FM, totally possible. Okay, and so there is actually an entire step-by-step that allows you to do that. And you can also distribute your podcast using Transistor's FM. And basically what happens here is that you are going to go to my shows, and you want to click on this distribution and distribution checklist to have a clear idea where you want to distribute the whole content. And in terms of analytics in Transistors, you really need to understand that Transistor and the platform allows you to see a couple of things. So you're able to see the average downloads per episode, the monthly listens, the number of subscribers, the listener trends and breakdowns per episode, like the comparison, the listening apps, devices and operating system, and geographic location of listeners. So this kind of geography is kind of important because it tells you a lot how to tailor your content. So if you know, for instance, that you are popular in Eastern Europe, or you're popular in Southeast Asia, you might want to maybe do a special show on those regions, or invite someone from those regions. It's all about adapting your content to where your audience is going, not only geographically, but also professionally and also socially. And another thing I want to say is that in the end, you got to understand that your audience changes all the time. Your audience is going through a series of transitions. So being close to where your audience is going to help you in the long run, big time. Let's talk about the rivals here. So when we talk about transistors, you have a couple of players. You have Anchor, you have Podbean, you have Buzzsprout, and then you have SoundCloud. So let's talk about Transistor versus Anchor, for instance. So Anchor, and we've said this on other shows, it's basically a one-stop shop for podcasting that's completely free. So basically, this is really, it's completely free. So while Anchor is not charging you anything, Transistor is charging you stuff. So maybe if you're looking for, if price is important for you, you might want to go with Anchor right off the bat. And you can actually create, edit, publish, analyze, monetize, and manage your podcast from a single platform. And Transistor is FM, really is solely for managing and distributing your podcast. And it's one of those things where you gotta really think comprehensively. What about Transistors versus Podbean? So Transistor actually and Podbean, they're both podcast hosting platforms. And similar to Transistor FM, Podbean doesn't include any creation features, but it does offer a customizable podcast website and in-depth analytics. So you're still well served here. And now the key differences that we have seen in our research is that basically you can live stream and you can monetize with Podbean, something you cannot really do with Transistors. And Podbean, now another thing I want to say is that live streaming creates, as you know, the opportunity to engage with the audience in a more intimate and live setting. And being able to monetize directly from your podcast host makes things a lot easier. You also have Transistors versus Buzzsprout. So Transistors actually offers unlimited podcast and storage for one fixed price. Meanwhile, with Buzzsprout, you can actually pay per podcast and self-face upload limits. So if you're a podcaster with multiple shows on the go, Transistor definitely is the more economical choice in the long run. You also have Transistors versus SoundCloud. So the biggest difference between Transistors and SoundCloud is their target audience. So SoundCloud actually basically focuses on a much broader cross-section of audio creators, whereas the Transistors FM was designed for podcasters. So, like think about Transistors FM as more niche based, whereas SoundCloud really focuses on the larger market. Okay, so if you're a podcaster, chances are you will have a better experience with Transistor FM. Just one example is migrating your podcast. So whether Transistors FM has completely streamlined the process, with SoundCloud you will have to manually upload every episode again. So it's one of those things where you have to be ready. Thank you so much for your attention. I really appreciate it. In today's conversation, I was just talking to you about Transistors FM. So this was a review. So let's quickly recap to this conversation. So I give you the preview, the smart moves, the pricing, the pros and cons, the features, the steps, the rivals, and now finally, the final say. Thank you. The recap as well. Thank you. God bless you. I say let's talk another time. And remember, you always have to be curious. Thank you.